button done up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching. G'day, everybody. This episode of the ISS podcast proudly supporting Swiss 8, the veteran-led mental health charity. Go check out their free holistic health app in app stores now. Guys, this next guest coming on, this has been a long time in the making on our behalf. Our next guest is Shane Healey. Now, his career, he has had an absolute phenomenal career, and he has done things that most people in the Army could only dream of doing. And it has been a phenomenal career. Mate, can you welcome to the show, first off?
G'day.
And, mate, can you tell us, I mean, up from 1995 to 2004, take us through your sort of career, because I know you've spent some time with the Navy as well and rubbed shoulders with De Gelder, and you take us through that, bro.
Yeah, so I wanted to join the Army since I was, I don't know, just 2 or 3 or whatever. Did Army Cadets, won Cadet of the Year in 91 and got to meet the Duke of Edinburgh, and but also was playing a rep junior at footy and stuff. And then at 1995, quit footy and joined the Army. Wound up at Kapooka in July-August 95. Back in when it was, you had regimental police, you had the full bastardisation. But it was probably the best time of my 20-year career. So I'm not going to complain about it at all. And I'm still better mates with those blokes than I am with most other guys. So it was awesome. But you didn't join with a job. You got given a job. But as things happen, and is pretty much the tale of my life, one of my section commanders was a couple of years ahead of me at high school. One of the other section commanders was the rugby captain at Kapooka, and our platoon sergeant was the coach. And before East Timor, rugby was the centre of gravity for the Army. And literally, they would send Blackhawks to bases to pick guys up for a game of rugby. As it was, because we joined without a job, you did a lot of your psych testing in the first couple of weeks. Or it was about, week 2, we're in a room doing some psych tests and whatever, and the platoon sergeant comes up and he gets on there to speak to Recruit Healey, and I'm like, oh, shit, what have I done? And he's like, oh, I hear you play rugby. And I went, because I played rugby at high school and, and played some other rep footy and stuff. And I said, oh, yep. He goes, oh, would you play rugby for the Army? And I'm like, oh, I guess so. All right. Training's at 4:30 down on the Oval. Oh, okay. Now, remember, they lock all your gear away. So I've turned up in my little friggin' Army shorts, my white shirt with my name across the front. And back then, there was... all the officers played, so you had third, seconds, and first. Your seconds were all of your young lieutenants and that thought they were wallabies. And then the twos were a lot of your senior NCOs who were harder. And then your first, some of those guys could really play. Like my section commander, Jim Petra, was a gun. And some of the other guys were in the Azure side. So and I'm standing there going, what am I doing here? And everyone's looking at me going, what's that recruit doing here? Anyway, so long story short, I ended up going infantry. And at that stage, and it kind of ties in with the old mate you had, the recon guy the other day, it was awesome and very topical talking about the alcohol and the recon course, because all I did at Sing 02 was play rugby, and my rugby coach was Jethro Hanna. So obviously, the reaction you've heard of Jethro before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't. So feel free to go into it because I haven't heard of him.
So Jethro was one of Cosgrove's scouts in Vietnam, and he ran recon training at sniper school at Singo. It was a chain smoker, old school. A lot of the instructors there were Vietnam vets. So when you did your infantry training in 95, water discipline was when you drink out of your water bottle, everyone gets a sip because there's no half water bottles through the bush. No walking between pits, on your guts, kind of, the buffet was 5Ks. And so because I pretty much got posted on as a sheriff's deputy just to play footy. And the Singleton Army side played in the Newcastle Saturday comp.
Yeah.
So, you'd be helping an independent rifle company out playing enemy, and then you'd turn up, face paint, train, and, we had guys like Shane Healey and Tommy Navasalo and, gun rugby players, because the three Army rugby postings were Kapuka, Singo, and Nogra. I mean, all the Army rugby blokes only played for West in the Brisbane comp. And, and then I busted my back pretty well and tore a lot of muscles and had trouble, and still to this day have trouble striding out. And there was no real x-rays or understanding of what the injury was. And so one of the things I had to do was I had to walk 10 Ks in full combat order, dig a stage 1, do that 3 days in a row to remain fit, just to stay in the infantry. Now, I still remember the doctor's name, and I won't say it, but he had just actually went to downgrade Jethro, and it was hell. Because Jethro had about 30 seconds until he retired as a legend. And the other thing he'd just done, we just had the farewell. There's a lot of books by a guy named Gary McKay. He writes about Vietnam, in good company, operating with your ears. I think it's ears open. And he was the commandant of the infantry centre at the time, and we had his farewell. And anyway, so because this doctor, who was a civvy, had kind of made some political incorrect decisions or so, he just dug in across the board, and no matter what you did. I changed roles to a reserve capacity in Sydney for a while. Then went out to Alice Springs.
Lovely part of the world.
Well,
it would have been in 95. That's 25 years ago.
Well, this was early 97.
Fuck, they would have had 6-shooters still, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, so a lot of what happened was I was sitting in my room, and so there's nothing going on. And there was I've still got the magazine, to be honest, too. The cover of the Army mag was about North Force and how they patrolled with live ammo, because they were after poachers, illegal alcohol drops, and back then Sovereign Borders was boatloads of Indonesian dudes washing up on shore. So you literally patrol with and we're like, that sounds like a real job. Let's try to get out there. Anyway, so did that for a little while, and then for some family stuff came back to Sydney and was at Mossman for a little while. And then one of my uncles, who was a bit of an idol of mine, he was a WOS CD and spent a lot of time in Perth establishing the Maritime CT in the late 70s, early 80s. And he just goes, "You're a dickhead." Like, the only restriction I had was I couldn't carry a pack over 25 kilos repetitively. That's literally, so he goes, "Divers don't carry packs." So I went into the Navy as a CD, literally, and then I was getting a medical, and I realised that for some reason that had been removed from my med docs. So I left, checked, I got another appointment, went in with another doctor. So is that right? Am I fit for everything? They said, yep. Bang, straight up, service transfer, back to the Army. And I was going to be a loadie. So I did all the testing to do my loadies course, and then service transferred across as an instructor in the Army Dive Wing in 2003, which was awesome. One of the best jobs I've had in the military, for sure. It's hard. Physically, it's one of the most, they cram about, because you can't, a lot of the guys that do the course come from Darwin and Townsville. So they want it, you can only dive in the summer months, because if you get unfit to dive with a cold or something for 2 days, you don't get enough time underwater. So they really condense what is essentially a 3-month course into about 6 or 7 weeks. Up at 5, dive 5 days a week until 5 at night. Tuesday and Thursday you dive until midnight. PT after, PT during. It was just awesome. And then
so for everybody that that is not in the Army or gets the acronyms, that's a clearance diver, right? So
no.
These guys are.
So that is, yes, I was in the Navy clearance diver first, but then service transfer. It's called the Army Working Diver. So it's engineer, CER heavy, underwater construction, clearance of dams and bridges, and they do underwater demolition now and stuff. So You're diving in zero viz or in dirty water and creeks and stuff. You're doing. I did a couple of real jobs there. Was Lark got submerged up at Wide Bay. So going up there and using the suckers to get a lot of the sand away and some airbags to float that again. 2 Commando did a parachute jump into Manly once and lost some weapons in the water. So we had to go around and look for a minimi and some stuff there.
Who was that? Say that unit again.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so it was pretty good. But yeah, so it's Army work diver. We're a clearance diving course. You come in, you do ships divers for 3 weeks. And guys and girls from the fleet can do that. Each ship's got a ship's diving detachment. But you've got to do that before you do the clearance diver acceptance test, which goes for about 10, 11 days. And then, which is all, around pit water and harbour, canoeing, swimming, and, it's interesting. But then your CD course goes for about 9 months, where this is literally a lot of that condensed into about 6 weeks. And I'm not sure what it's like now, but back then it was just no joke. Our instructor at the time had a deck of cards, and if they'd do something wrong, you'd pick a card. It might have 500 flutter kicks, 500 push-ups. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mossman, but it's all up hills. So it was one run called 3 Hills Repeat, and you're up and down a Warber Street. And the guy that I worked with, I'll call him Danny because he's in SOCOM now. One of the fittest men I've ever worked with. When you do a 2.4 and everyone would go, he'd start last and he'd come back first and go, what's your issue? And so anyway, that was really good. And then while I was waiting for my Lodies course, I got offered a job to go and do 3 months in Iraq.
Which takes us into, so is this taking us, is this into you getting out and doing the private security gigs, or is this, Yeah, so as if doing that was not interesting enough, you decided, hey, fuck it, let's go and do some private security work in Iraq?
Yeah, so it was a combination of a couple of things. Obviously, I was in when 9/11 happened. I'll never forget that, Everyone started messaging each other, and because it sounds weird, but it was also a new thing to be able to instant message someone. So it wasn't like everyone just does it now. It was a little bit weird, and then fucking everyone just went to work, and the boss just come out and goes, oh, well, you're all here. Well, America's just been attacked and we're at war, essentially. And, okay, right, let's go. So obviously, Perth deployed and to Afghanistan and Iraq with SOTG and came back. And that was pretty much it, if you remember. Solomon's not much was going on. Timur had transitioned for the first time to police operations, and I'm like, fuck, I missed the boat. And then guys that I was in the reserves with up at Mossman, they'd already done a job in Vanuatu doing some security work for this company. And then there was an opportunity to go to Iraq and train the newly established Iraqi commandos. And initially it was 3 months, and I'm like, yep, I can, leave without pay, do that, come back and do the ladies thing. And I didn't leave for 4 years.
So, because this is where it's interesting. So in the army, you always feel safe, I suppose, if you have a little safe space, because you've got extraction methods, you've got fire support, you've got mates, you've got a lot of things. And for somebody, we've got mates that do private security, but no one I've never done it. Is there more stress and more pressure? Knowing, what were the support things in place to get you guys out? Because generally you're fucking done, right?
So I was one of the first Australians over there. We had nothing, and I mean nothing. We drove. I tell people that have done it what we did in that first August, September, and no one believes us, right? If I was by myself, they still wouldn't believe me. But I go, talk to old mate. He was, and I'll show him photos like. We lived in the red zone, not in the green zone in Baghdad. And we drove in a one vehicle, beat up, soft skinned vehicle down essentially along the Iranian border into a place called An-Yamaniya. We were the only non-Iraqis in the area. And it's 35 kilometres from Iran. Our kut was pretty passive at that stage, but it was one of the first places to have a big uprising. And when we got there, so originally the contract started as a policing contract, and then it got upscaled to being a special operations contract where the guys we were training would go into Fallujah. And so we got there and there were some of these old American police officers on a dine call contract that were just good old sheriffs, you know, overweight dudes, and had never fired a long gun in their life, and they were walking around like zombies.
What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, like fucking zombies, right? And there was me. There was already a couple of Aussies there, but we were like the military guys that turned up. There was an ex-sergeant, recon sergeant from 8-9 RAR, a recon dude from 2 RAR, and another dude who wound up going to become a sniper at 2 Commando, who had already been in Armoured, I think. And we were the Army dudes. And anyway, we're looking around and they're going, like, it's hell here. They're shooting all nights and it's, you know, the enemy's everywhere and we've got to do pickets. And they were just on. And we're like, what do you mean they're shooting every night? Or over there, every night, you know, there's gunshots and so you can't sleep and you've got to be ready to go and you've got to sleep in your shit. And we're like, oh, well, who is it? What's going on? Are the rounds hitting the building? And they're going, nah. And so we go, well, let's do an OP. And they go, what does that mean? And they go, well, tonight we'll go and sit over there and actually see what's going on. What do you mean? We'll sit over there in those bushes or something and we'll cam up and we'll see who's doing the shooting and where they're coming from. That's suicide. No, that's what we do. Like, we go and sit and see what's going on. Anyway, these American coppers couldn't believe it. So we went and did it. And we worked out that the perimeter guard towers were actually shooting at each other. So we come, after about, I don't know, whatever it was, we just go, this is whatever. We walk in and so we go down to the American contractors who are running it and I go, do you do like ammo checks and stuff? And they're like, what for? You know, your guard force. Nah. Where do you get your guard force from? Well, half are Kurdish and half are local Shia. Okay.
Oh, right.
And I didn't know much about the Middle East then. And he goes, yeah, they hate each other. And I go, you know, they're shooting at each other. He goes, oh, yeah, we lose guards all the time. Anyway, so when I go back, grabbed all the guys, said, look, get all your gear off, go to bed. What do you mean? There's no enemy out there. It's the local guard force, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of, and I can send some photos of it, we had an old Jeep Cherokee B4. We had go bags in it. We had a ton of ammo, and that was our Alamo. We actually moved away from the main building. We had our own little building. And there was, four or five ex-soldiers, and we had our own actions on. And that was it. There was no, if we had got hit, that was us. It was, and this was just after the guys got hit in Fallujah, and it was definitely our most dangerous course of action. At this stage, there were no US soldiers on the base. That started to come in later. So it was just us. And we would have been 90 k's south of Baghdad.
So me and Mex have been talking about this a lot over the last week and a half with the Afghan stuff going on, trying to break down and understand exactly why people join the military. What was their internal moral motivation to go to Afghan in the first place? And it's easy to use throwaway lines like, I'm giving myself to something bigger. It was my purpose in life. And that works when you are justifying why you joined a national military to go over and do what's right for the Australian people. I mean, I personally, and this is what me and Mex have discussed, is I think a lot of us are still, we've got the same motivation that people had in World War I and II. It was exciting. It was adventurous. It was a test of manhood. It was a challenge that I wanted to see if I was up to it, right? And that's, I believe, truly, when I look in the mirror, that was probably what motivated me to join the military in the first place. Question, I'm getting to it. When you go from someone who's been in the military, who's like, oh yeah, yes, there is all of these socially acceptable reasons why I would join a nation's military to go and fight overseas. Oh, hang on. Sorry, my headphones are just blowing up. Still good. And what motivates you? Well, what was your driving force to become a private security contractor in the earliest stages of the Middle East conflict, with no support? What motivates you to do that outside of money?
Are you guys familiar with sheepdog and wolves? That analogy?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a sheepdog.
Nice.
I'm not a wolf and I'm not a sheep, and I guess I can be all idealistic and say I wanted to help and all that, but initially I wanted to get my gun on, and I wanted to test myself. I'd done 5, 6, 7 years of training, and it's like a sportsman. You want to play a game, and since I was 5 or 6, I wanted to be a soldier in a war, and I just literally wanted to know. I've done a lot of boxing, martial arts, and stuff too, and I've got to test myself. Am I a fake or am I the real deal? And you've done a million sections attacks with blanks. Do you still get up and take a knee and well-aimed shots on a 2A range? And so there was a bit of that going on. I genuinely believed in what I was doing once I got there. I left as selfishly just wanting to get my gun on. Within about 2 days, I fell in love with the Middle East and the culture and the history and the people. My interpreter that I got on day 3, we're still mates. I've helped him get out of Iraq. I've watched his kids grow up. I helped that. So my motivation definitely changed over there. But I guess the easiest way to break it down is I'm a sheepdog.
Mate,
go, mate.
I was going to say, I love it. That's an honest answer that not many people are willing to put forward, because that is 100% correct. I can relate to that too, being the sports analogy, I trained my entire life to play footy. Now I'm sitting on the sideline. Like, you do get, in the Western world at the moment, it's not socially acceptable to say, I look forward to going to war. Whereas it's kind of in our DNA. We haven't evolved away from needing to be in conflict all the time. And there's no rite of passage for young blokes anymore. And I think while there's a war, when you understand that the majority of the world is, especially the third world, is killing each other, they're in conflict all day, every day. We're lucky to be insulated from that. But I think that if you understand that that's actually going on, there is a craving for most young men to go, I want to fucking get amongst it.
100%. But I'm doing a lot of research in that space at the moment, because there's also a lot of scientific evidence that there's a warrior gene.
Right.
And I'm really trying to investigate that too. And what makes, someone to be a soldier, and, a sheepdog can be a first responder, a firefighter, an ambulance officer. You're putting yourself between the sheep and the wolf. But what's that next thing that you're prepared to give your life up for someone else, or, and a lot of it is, and, you would have seen it in a battalion, there's just guys that aren't cut out for the job. Doesn't mean they're weak or whatever, but, for whatever reason, there's a bit of self-preservation in there, or, I've been blown up and shot and whatever, so I think there's a bit of selfishness about it. But for sure, it's something that, it's a calling. You can't force someone to do it.
Mm.
And I think, I've got a lot of experience when I was in Iraq. So I literally was on a US convoy in November 2004, and we got ambushed, and I was out the window fucking getting it on, and came back, and the one of the commanders in the convoy, this American guy, goes, fucking, you don't mind getting it on, do you want a job? And I'm like, doing what? He goes, well, doing that. And I fucking know. So I wound up on a US contract with a government agency doing some other stuff, literally because I enjoyed getting my gun on.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I don't think we know that teenage males wired in to be more risk averse. That's why they're always killing themselves in fucking car accidents, doing dumb shit, jumping off building, into water. We are programmed to go and do dumb shit, testosterone and all these things. And like you said, I really like the point, because it really resonated with me, mate. When you get there and you immerse yourself, so I think governments do have a lot of responsibility in when we go to war. We know that war is an arm of politics. It is one of the tools that, they use. We are a tool of politics, not a problem. So it's our government's job to make sure we're going there for the right reasons. When the boys and the girls go, and they go for their own reasons, once they get there, and like you said, you saw Iraqis and you're like, fuck, these guys are actually pretty cool guys, right? We went over to Afghan and we trained with the A&A and we're like, oh, these guys want to go and get in gunfights. Like, they're fucking still warriors. They're not getting paid and some of them are unmotivated, fine, but you try and get an Australian 19-year-old kid out paying him $40 an hour to go and get in. Do you know what I mean? So, well, yeah, that really resonates, mate.
It's the right kid, and that's the difference too. Like, and that's what's being lost right now too when they talk about the collapse of the Afghan army. And I've got a history background. I look at everything, whether it be training, diet, warrior, soldiering, war, anything through the lens of history. Go back to the lizard brain. Why did we leave the cave? Why did we go over the mountain? What made us? And that's that risky behaviour. Fuck, what's over there? Let's have a look. And that's one side of it. The next side is, what do we do when we run into the saber-toothed tiger? Fight or flight. Who stands there and has a crack? And who fucking runs? So they both interconnect, but they're a bit separate too, with that risky behaviour, if that makes sense. Bit of self-preservation, and that's where the selfishness and selflessness comes in. The young dude who will do the risky stuff, but he's selfish, self-preservation will kick in. Fuck, I'm not popping my hand up over that. That guy's shooting at me. And then there's a selfless dude who will pop his head up and return fire because, you know, he's trying to get his mates out of there, or, you know, an IED's gone off and he's got to expose himself to help a mate who's been wounded. That's in what I've seen, what I've learned and done, that's the difference to me. Mm-hmm. You know, what's his name? Grossman sums it all up in Killology. It needs another update, I think, but that was his job. You know, if you've read the book and you're familiar with it, the Battle of Gettysburg, they were picking rifles up that had been reloaded 10 times, but guys couldn't take a sight picture, and that was his job. And one of the first things he realised is you had to dehumanise the targets. So then all of a sudden you got your silhouette targets come in, centre of scene mass, and anyway, it's unnatural for sheep to kill another sheep.
Yeah, I think that genetic memory stuff, this is massive. We know, I think we spoke about this once or twice on the podcast, but deep diving this would have been great. And I'll be happy to get you on once you break the warrior gene research, mate, get you on and break it down.
I'll say balls down. I've been researching this to be honest, you know, I was sick for a little while and I mean, we'll get into it later, but it was to understand me. Why did I just make certain decisions, and why do I thrive in that? And like, you know, my psychologist goes, mate, I could sit you back in Baghdad tomorrow and you'd be better than you are now. So, you know, I learned to be comfortable in the chaos, or that I was comfortable in the chaos. You know, I got shot for the first time the 23rd of December 2004 in 2 a.m. coming up in a South Baghdad in a double ambush. I went to work the next day.
Well, there's guys that didn't, mate. So there's guys, we had guys from our trip that, you know, people decided, this isn't for me, man. When you know, Benny got killed from our trip, there were a couple of boys that like, nah, this is a bit real. This isn't for me. And that's fine. And I think it's got to be there's got to be this genetic predisposition that goes on, how birds can find water, how birds and how animals know how to do things that have never been taught, that don't know.
You know what it is? And in my last role in Army, it was part of my job when I do pre-deployment briefings and that, we don't give soldiers the so what. You go in Afghanistan, you're going to train the A&A, but why? Who are they? Why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve? You know, they talk about the strategic corporal. Well, what about the strategic digger? In a counterinsurgency environment, when your whole purpose is to separate the insurgency from the population, you've got to explain to the soldiers who the population are and why. And that's where we failed our soldiers in Afghanistan. And I'm writing about it now, our politicians didn't even know. You know, the Prime Minister and Chief of Army who sent us to Afghanistan in 2006 didn't even know that Mullah Omar and Mullah Bereda came from Uruzgan. Like, they thought that we'd been given this backward patch of dirt. It was the centre of gravity and key terrain for both the insurgents or the Taliban and the government. Hamid Karzai got rescued from TK Airfield in 2001. And if you watch, there's that documentary, Afghanistan, An Australian Story, Peter Leahy and John Howard and all that are on there going, well, we had no idea. We just thought it was a backward little town the Americans gave us. Like, Mullah Omar's family lived in the Tangi Valley the whole time we were there. That's why the Battle of Deripit happened. The guys were starting to patrol near his compound and the Taliban defended it.
Get fucked.
No. We did, SATG, we did 2 clearances of it. And we just said, because I knew where it was and had met with some of his family, we just set a blocking force up in one location and pushed up the valley because we knew why they were there and where they were going to be and, had some fun.
So righto, this is a good segue into, so oh no, actually it's not, mate. So Fallujah, you went, while you were private security, training the Iraqi special police, Fallujah 2. Were you, and your involvement in that, was that with the forward line of troops, or what was your involvement in Fallujah 2?
Bit of everything. So the guys we trained were supposed to be in it. Our contracting company was located with the Iraqis in their camp Fallujah, so next to the Marine base. So we were there. We had some key points to take, which was mythical. And it was a supporting role, but also it was one of those ones, the Iraqis, like you would have seen in Afghanistan, the Afghans are going to do a cordon search of this area, but in reality they're going to sit to the side and someone else is going to do it. We were somewhere in the middle.
So was this the Fallujah, which was the one where the Yanks kind of did a bit of a letter drop and said, hey...
That was the second one.
That was the second one.
So
we're coming.
Petra was the commander for the conventional forces first when they did the first battle. And it was an uneasy truce, we'll call it. Then I guess what we'll call Al-Qaeda in Iraq really kicked off that's the Sunni heartland, Ramadi, Fallujah. Then you had the Blackwater contractor issue with Scotty and that got killed. Now, between them, the Marines were getting ready to rip out with the conventional forces, and that was Mathis. And they were like, right, we're going to come in new uniforms, new idea. So the Iraqis know it's a clean slate. And they actually had a really passive, which is really weird for Marines, but they had a very passive mind. They wanted to come with a passive mind state. Now, the flip side to that is, regardless of what you've ever heard about the Marines, they are the greatest fighting force on earth. The US Marine Corps, they're so determined in the way they're taught. There's a beachhead, go and secure it. There's a shithole, go in there and get it. They don't question, in they go, and they're very good at it. So of all the units to be ripping out to fuck with America, they fucked with the Marines. And Mathis was their commander. So just before H hour, his last paragraph was, be polite, be professional, but be prepared to kill everyone you see.
That's still doing the rounds on Instagram, that meme.
Oh, I heard it. I literally heard that. Take it in the Padre to the Marine prayer and bang, off they go. I'm like, what the fuck? SPs, bang, bang, bang. But they did that letter drop. They set about a 50,000 man camp up at Haditha Dam for all the population to leave. Now, my uncle and I know some old school guys that had been into Northern Ireland, and then Irish myself, so I've got relatives over there, and you patrol as you get urban operations along the side of the building. They're tipping hot water and fat out on you. They're trying to get you in the fire lanes, women, children. Well, you would have seen American Sniper. That is 100% on the money. So they didn't leave. No one went to that man camp.
No one?
No.
Fuck all.
Yeah. And then, so what do? You had 2 main roads from Baghdad to Fallujah. I'll remember their names because they're all Michigan and Mobile. And they used to use young kids. So they'd sit like a 6-year-old boy in the middle of the road. Now, they'd have an ambush set up. So there's this little Marine driving, lead Humvee in his convoy. Sees a kid on the road. He's got 2 choices. Run the kid over or stop knowing there's an ambush set up for his guys. Or they used to use the kids to dig the holes for their IEDs on the side of the road, which is under the rules of engagement, that's a legal target. So you got a 20-year-old Marine goes, do I shoot that kid or do I let him go and let him build that, where that IED is going to hit one of my mates? That's what they were like, mate. They don't, and that's where you've got so many young soldiers now, especially those Americans that fought in Alhambra, questioning what they did.
Yeah, questioning it themselves, and then also you get the general public and the media picks up a story like that, and they're like, everyone's our Marines are overseas just killing children, and that becomes the headline. It fucks people up for life.
In 05, when I was on that American program with the Yanks, we would do jobs. We were low visibility, bashing around Baghdad in like taxis and stuff, and we'd be in Sada City and either witness an American military convoy get ambushed and then return fire, or we'd get in a gun battle ourselves. And then the Iraqis had sanitised the area, then called the BBC out. The American military just came through and killed innocent people, and that would get splayed all over the world. The military's killing innocent people. That's how good they were. And, you can't, once that's out there, you can't retract it. You can't take the journalist with you. And most of them knew, but that was the messaging that got out.
So hang on, when you say most of them knew, you're saying most journalists knew that they were getting washed or doctored stories, and they ran them anyway. Yeah.
So you got to remember, and you see it now with Trump. And I was there. I'm right into US politics because I was there during the election of 2004, and they have a lot of State Department's political appointees. So you'll work for free in a campaign on the premise that your candidate wins, you get a job in the State Department or something. And so you might have a Democratic media and a Republican President Bush write negative stories. So they want to write that Bush's policies having a negative effect. They don't want to write, and the BBC was worse. 100%.
Yeah, my eyes are slowly getting open to. I'm paying more and more attention through. Trump, love him or hate him, he definitely made me start to learn and pay more attention to American politics. Flow and effect, I pay more attention to Australian politics. But that's exactly the point that I'm getting on all of these. The more I focus on politics, the more I see that there is no national pride anymore. It's me versus the other team within my own country. I don't care if I make the whole country hate themselves, hate each other, as long as they pick my blue team over their red team. And it's fucking gross.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about that, and I'm not sure, do you know who Dakota Meyer is?
Oh, the name, yeah, I've heard Rogan.
No, he's a US Marine.
Oh, the dude, yes.
To win
the
the
dude that
Medal
played.
of Honor.
Yeah.
He's out of control, right? And anyway, he always talks about, I never want another 9/11, but I want another 9/12 because of how America came together. It's the same after when Pearl Harbor got bombed, and this is the biggest mistake of terrorist group. What they're talking about now, the 20th anniversary of 9/11 is coming up, and that Al-Qaeda is going to try to target one of the memorials. Worse than they could do. Because America's in turmoil now fighting. They would come together like that. Yeah. There's nothing more scarier than a united America.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I've got to be careful. I love a good conspiracy, mate. And for mine, like a false flag right now is exactly what America needs. So we've got to be careful.
I can give you, so 2 weeks out from the 2004 election, John Kerry was beating George Bush. John Kerry does a speech, I view drugs a greater threat to national security than terrorism. 4 days later, Osama bin Laden makes a speech, I'm going to kill Americans and target America. George Bush wins the election the next week. Yeah. It's like they pulled him out of a basement.
Which is exactly what they did. Maybe, allegedly. Who knows?
You never know.
So, this is a great. So, the audience right now, and then most of them are AJs. There is a lot of civvies out there, and they're like, "What the fuck? Why should we listen to this bloke?" So, you got back into after private security. You decided to enlist in the intelligence corps, right?
Yeah. So I started. I started as a 2IC, and then I became a team leader because I was a little bit in awe. I was working with guys from 22 and CAG and DevGuru and whatever, and they were just so hell-bent on a dick measuring comp. And I'm like, fucking hang on, we're all going there. Everyone gets a say type deal. And Dan, who was our overarching opso, goes, right, you're the boss, you can keep them under control. I'm like, you fucking kidding me? And I was the only Australian on the with us, you know, Aussie one. So I became a team leader literally because I could keep the peace. And so then I started going to meetings and briefs. And at that time, the company that had the intelligence contract at the English Embassy, Control Risk, they're actually all ex-Aussie Inc. officers, Dobbin and Trent and that. And so I just started hanging out with them and learning about intelligence, and I got more interested and fascinated in why we were doing something than actually doing it. And because, especially Trent, like the guy is an absolute like mentor and guide. He's just awesome. And he really helped me kind of understand that whole process, and I was just hooked. Really hooked. And so I actually also felt I found my purpose in the military. And so, so that's why I came back and went into IntCorp.
And then, I mean, that sounds like, mate, I cannot believe the chronological order. I got your bio and we did some checks, and I was like, Jesus Christ. So you're part of Intelligence Corps, and you go to work for SOCOM.
Yeah.
And now, as part of that, you go back overseas, and your job is to, well, I mean, effectively, you're creating target packs for people,
yep,
so they can do targets. And just so, can you explain to the audience who don't have a military background what a target pack is and what an intelligence analyst does, and then what is the end state of those target packs?
Okay, yeah, and this is where everyone's got themselves into trouble, because that's never in any of the books. It's just like we wake up one day, the Jedi mind trip, you know, we're going to go here and find this bloke. But there's hours and hours and hours of time goes into that. So basically what happens, and I'll give you a 24-hour, because we work in what's called the F3 EAD cycle: find, fix, finish, analyze, disseminate, and it just keeps going. So find, right, so we'll talk about Baluchi Valley as an easy one. And I would have information request. Who is the insurgent commander in Baluchi Valley? How many insurgents in Baluchi Valley? Who is the bomb maker in Baluchi Valley? Where do they get their weapons from? Things like that, right? You know, what are their ICOM names? And then we have what there's called sources and agencies. So agencies could be, in an Afghan context, Afghan Army, NDS, the police. Then you've got our strategic agencies, you know, ASD, DIO, whatever. We have field human teams within the Australian Intelligence Corps that were over there. So they're the agencies. So you have essentially a spreadsheet, and then you have sources. Who do you know that might have that information? So it could be diggers at a patrol base, could be anything. You've just got to really, liaison's a massive piece. You've got to essentially spread your net as far and wide. So you work out who can answer these questions, and you send them out to everyone. And then you start getting the replies back. Okay, so, and I'll talk about Baluchi because there's articles about how I helped conventional guys go up, and I got a bomb maker and whatever. The intelligence guy at the patrol base, we were on our course together, so we'd talk all the time. They were getting hit with IEDs by this bloke, Haji Hamdullah, big dude riding around in a motorbike. And, you know, there's actually a documentary on Channel 10 that was filmed at the same time where they talk about how he just IED'd him and whatever. Anyway, so you get a picture, right? That's the guys, and that's the insurgent's name, or the leader's name. I still remember he lives in Quality Now Village. His compound C336. You know, you just start building a pattern of life up. And so that all goes into, it's a legal format. You know, you've got to prove under law that he's a member of an armed insurgency. He's conducting operations against coalition forces, and he's conducting operations against Afghan forces. So they're the three legal things you've got to prove through multiple sources. So you can't just get one letter, one bit of information, go, yeah, that's him and there he is. So then you get it all together.
Old mate's pissed off that he bloody cut his grass. Or
my next door neighbours or something have been like,
my next door neighbour's a bomb maker. Single source, unreliable reporting.
Because that comes up a lot, and I will get to that because that's one thing that pisses me off because it's an accusation I get hit with all the time. Anyway, so I'll build it up and I'll use, I worked in what was called the fusion and targeting cell. So, it was picture a shipping container with a big table in the middle and all the agencies around. And, and so the Digo guy or girl would do an overlay with a mat. You'd have a picture of the hut, whatever. And then when I get it, and I would have a threshold for the boss. When I get it to that threshold, I then brief it to the intelligence officer, the OPSO, I say the 3, the 5 and that. And they'd either go, yeah, good to go. Then it goes to the legal officer who checks it under the LOAC and ROE. And then it goes to the CEO. Once all that gets approved, it goes to the high headquarters. So for us, it'd go to SOTA Southeast. And if they concurred with all the information in the JPEL pack, the Joint Priority Effects List, that insurgent would then be given an objective name and put on the JPEL, which then meant we could target that insurgent.
Fuck. And then, because we're allowed to, what were they still using? Are we allowed to disclose the nicknames of them, or is that not a bloody thing?
No, it's all out there.
Because were they cards, or were they? They were just different.
So in Afghanistan, initially they were all weapons. Because there was no real performer initially when the guys started doing it. So a lot of our objectives were axe, brick, wrench, trebuchet, katana, Winchester, these kind of names. Then we got designators. So the first ones we got were YA. So every insurgent that I put up for nomination for the JPEL had to be like young apprentice, Yankee apostle. And the reason for that is the insurgents might go through Kandahar, Kazaruzgan, and other task forces would get that information and they'd go, YA, oh, that's a 66 target. So they might send an email, hey, young apprentice is moving through our AO, should we pick him up? Are you following him? Is it going to wreck one of your... Because we might be observing him, for example, we wanted to know how they got from Aruzgan into Quetta and how long that took. Because initially we thought it was a couple of days, but it turned out to be about 4 hours. So we would get information, and then Senior Insurgent Commander came in last night for Shura. We're like, there's no way they've come in and out in a night. So through a liaison I had with one of the local partnering forces, they got 2 of their blokes on bikes to do the trip. We're like, fuck, it was 4 hours. So then all that reporting that we dismissed for a year, all of a sudden become irrelevant. So we had to go back over and go, well, that's actually true. There's indicators and warnings that that's happening. So, but then if, for example, SOTA Southeast or the ODA down in Zabul or something got wind of it, this guy on the JPEL coming through and whacking, that's going to hurt our operation. So they would, hey, Heels, it's, Fred 18 Fox down at the ODA. We've got Yankee Apostle coming through. Do you want us to grab him or you're watching him or whatever? So there's a fair bit of that going on in the soft community, but that's why, we started with YA and then we got MS, Massive Strike, whatever.
So from what you've just answered the question, but every movie you watch, they make out that any American intelligence agency is over there to measure dicks and keep all the information for themselves. But you're saying passage of information between nations was pretty free when it came to intelligence.
100%. We had Americans in our FATC with us.
Yeah.
So one of the programs that one of our FEs did was a counter narcotics program, the drug interdiction. They'd go up in a helmet and blow drug labs up. The DEA had analysts with inside the FATC. We had COIC and JIADF analysts in there. So we would operate in helmet a lot. So I'd talk to the Brits. Yeah, no. And even when I was in Iraq in 14, 15, or even then, the SEALs down at Ripley, I got, because I'd worked with them in Iraq in 04, 05, 06, I could talk American. So I knew what to say, and I used to brief their SEAL commander every Wednesday night, and got a commendation, and exchanging information happened on a daily basis.
That's interesting. So how do you, back then, I mean, you were younger and than you are now, obviously. Cool statement, Max. How did you go in briefing some of these big dick people? I mean, and there's some other things we can talk to later on. You weren't just briefing SEAL team commanders and, I can't even think of some of the high, like you were briefing some big dick people. What do you do before you walk in and you're like, what I'm about to say could get a lot of people killed? Or how do you fucking calm the fuck down?
So there's two things. One, you're exceptionally trained well at Dinty, and then I was exceptionally well mentored when I first got into SOCOM. My Myo had been around forever, and the S2 at the time, who I deployed with, they were really, really, really good at making sure you knew your stuff, if that makes sense. And I'll give you an example. I'd been in Afghanistan for 4 days in late November 2010. And one of my jobs, every morning I would go to the OCCPU, which was like the Afghan Coordination Centre for Uruzgan, and they would have a 9 o'clock intelligence meeting and have all their intelligence agencies and guys around a table and, talk about what's going on in the battle space. And then I'd go back and write a report or whatever. TK was getting rocketed from a village called Sefer Gabi, which was up on one of the hills. If you, from the far end of the runway on Camp Holland, the hills up there, that's where the 105s were coming from. Anyway, I was sitting in the fat seat, and the OC of 666, so the SATG partner force, Major Nick, come in, he goes, Heels, come next door, quick. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Go in there, and they're getting ready for a brief. And then my boss, who was a captain, and then the S2 major sits there next to me, and we're kind of against a wall, and the CO comes in, and the RSM, and the OPSO, and, then Nick starts talking about, look, one of our partner force commanders has just given us information that the rockets are at this compound. And then he goes, now I'm going to turn over to Heels for the intelligence. I had no warning, what? Hang on. And I'd only been there about a week, right? And they're all looking at the TVs. I didn't have a presentation. I had to brief off the map. I go, well, sir, I have heard that information before. It corroborates with what I've got, Sefer Gabi, blah, 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 blah. And then the CEO, who I actually knew very well, turns around to the RSM and goes, anything from the RSM? And the RSM asked a couple of questions. Anything from the OPSO? The OPSO asked a couple of questions. All right, yeah, looks at the Nick. All right, yeah, I'm happy. Go find them. And I'm like, what? Off they went. And I go to the S2, I go, what's going on? He goes, oh, they're going to look for those rockets. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, you corroborated and confirmed where they are, so they're going to look for them. What do you mean? I just said that, no, yeah, and they're going to look for them. We play with live ammo here, Heels. And from that moment, I didn't rest, didn't sleep. When I did a brief, I didn't say anything that I couldn't corroborate or know to be true. Because like you said, guys are going out after it. And I'd been in those shoes too and had lost mates. I'd lost a couple of really good friends at Fallujah and stuff and had been shot. And so I wore it really personal. Every time I briefed, no matter was it from an alpha, like a platoon commander, to the Prime Minister, to whoever it was, it was going to be well-researched and on the money.
Did you ever know what assets? So you're going to go and brief, because I'm a complete lay in this terms, mate. The only intelligence we ever got, or the only world of intelligence I was part of, was as a Lance Corporal when we got intelligence reports read from our team leader, and he's like, yeah, there's a red Hilux in Afghanistan, and they might, and it's really rough, and it could have a bomb on it. And you're like, what the fuck? So I have no idea, right? Especially not at the higher levels. But what assets? So knowing that context, what assets? Do you know what assets you would have in actioning those target packs? And then, so you say, hey, there's a predator, or there's a fucking,
No.
Or you've got a whole SAS team, or squadron that's ready to go?
It depends, and it changed from job to job. There were times when, especially in 2012, where the CEO would go, right, you've got that FE for 2 weeks for this purpose, targeting Fred Flintstone or whatever. We always knew what assets we had because it would be part of, int briefs first, and then the ops, take that information and they would then come up with, a couple of COAs on how they're going to execute. There were times, and this is also not reported very well, the reason it's the joint priority effects list, we might want to kill someone, we might want to detain them, we might want to just watch them. Like, for example, there was a insurgent commander in Sarkum that we couldn't get to because it was so close to the base. Every time he went there, very good spotter network, he just lay low. So in one of my meetings with the Afghans, they would go, all right, Special Forces, do you have anything you want to say? And I said, yeah, I want the compound for Mullah Rahimullah because Quetelov's going to go and kill him. And they were like, yes, write it down, Quetelov, Mullah Rahimullah, Sarkum, kill him. And the Aussies in the room are freaking out. You can't say that. And I'm like, why not? We don't do that. But I knew that there was leaks there. We knew, it was, we had to get approval, the boss is on you. I didn't go there just saying it. It was an actual operation. Me walking in there saying those two sentences was an approved plan operation. Sure as shit, 24 hours later, that dude's in Pakistan. So we achieved the effect. We wanted him out of the battle space and we got it. And that's not understood or explained a lot. And we did a lot of that. Even the scan budgie, right? The UAV. Now, we had to use it. We hated it because they called it the mosquito. They heard it. So if we had no intention, of going to Mirabad, we'd put it up over Mirabad. So the insurgents go, oh, the mosquito's in the air. They're looking for us. Don't leave. So that was an offensive weapon we used. So, yeah, we knew exactly what we had, what our special operations is all about targeted effects. What's the effect we want to achieve? It's not just... And Perth, partly because of the way some of the guys have written their books, this is where the Brereton report's got it wrong, the whole kill-capture thing, it was about an effect. What effect are we trying to achieve in the battle space?
Fuck, mate. This is an eye opener for someone who's never been involved in it, and the checks and balances are phenomenal. Like, it's not just, hey, there's old mate in this compound, go and get him. It goes through, like I said, the legal officers in every meeting. He can call, nope, no go, no go, CO, XO. In a Afghanistan SOTG between the CO, the RSM. And the XO, you've probably got 15 trips, 30 years of special operations experience. You're not dealing with slouches, you're dealing with really competent commanders. The S2's probably on his second or third trip. You're not dealing with mugs, you're dealing with people who really, really know what's going on. So did you ever knowing that, I know, did you ever get it wrong, or was there ever things where collateral damage was a little bit looser and you're like, fuck?
I'll say no, and that's not because I'm patting myself on the back, that's because of the checks and balances. Like, I didn't have the power, like I said, in that, when the boys went up to Sefard Agabi and looked for the rockets, I didn't send them up there. I provided information or intelligence. And then, the command asked me more. Like, there was one brief I gave in 2012 on the key insurgent for the Australian Defence Force at the time, Abdul Hai. He was a big IED instructor facilitator. And my brief probably went for about half an hour. The Q&A went for about 40 minutes, to the point I had to have a rest after. I had a headache. Like, it was that thorough. Why are you saying that? Why do you assess that? Why do you think that? And then the CO will then have conversations with his OPSO or his FEs, and then they come up with multiple plans, not just we're going to go do this. These are the options. Which one do we want to do?
So the UAV story is one that I can kind of reflect on and go, as an infantry digger, diggers on the ground, more often than not, will see something going on that doesn't suit their current individual environment, and they will instantly go, these fucking idiots, they don't even know that the Taliban can hear their UAV. I mean, and that's one occasion where you've confirmed it was for a deliberate intent. Is it safe to assume that or not all, but the majority of these other situations where young diggers are like, we're going the long way, the boss is an idiot, or the int we've got's terrible, X, Y, Z. I mean, I saw your eyes then. I'm aware that young lieutenants can be idiots at times, but is it safe to say that diggers not knowing 2 up, 3 up, the bigger picture is probably what could explain a lot of the circumstances where diggers get frustrated at stupidity?
I don't know, because the level of detail of intelligence that we used at 66 compared to what the conventional guys got was chalk and cheese. And they're not doing specific targeting ops, they're doing bigger ops. But I'll give you the example, and it's the one that's, it's in the media and whatever. When I went up to Baluchi to get Hamidullah, the conventional guys at the base had actually arrested him a couple of times prior. But because of the 94 hours from detention to either convict or release, and they couldn't get assets up to get him, they had to let him go. So he felt invincible, and they felt really crushed. And they also didn't know, because at a patrol base you don't have access to top secret information, they didn't know what we had on him at a top secret level, who he was talking to, where exactly he fitted in, we were trying to find out where he was getting his components from. Our techs would take the IEDs with them and exploit it, so we would have biometric data and DNA. You don't really see that at the patrol base either. But when that day that they had the sure out the back of the patrol base and he turned up, was carrying on, he didn't know that I was in a Black Hawk at TK about to come up. And not all the diggers knew either, so they're kicking stones going, this is bullshit, here he is again. They knew that he was responsible, and then here the Black Hawk, and they've kind of looked up. He's looked up, and within 3 minutes, I've got him bound, gagged, blindfolded, and fucking belly up in the Black Hawk. And I'll never forget, in all my career, as we're lifting off, that whole fucking patrol base was like at a rock concert, just cheering, because this is the fucker that they've had trouble with, and finally we've been able to get him off the battle space. So they didn't know a lot of that background stuff, but we did. And you got to remember, every SATG, especially a lot of the guys in the FEs, come out of battalions. So, like in 2012, when you had your insider attacks, no one felt it more than the shooters. They're like when it happened on my birthday, but when the 3 guys at Patrol Base Wahid, the 3 RAR guys got shot, mate, your majority of patrol commanders were all X3RR blokes. They're like, there are fucking guys up there, we're going to go and help them. And that also isn't seen either. Like, they take that shit personal, whether it be 1 RAR, 2 RAR, wherever. They're looked at like little brothers or little cousins, and yeah.
Yeah. No, I can definitely feel for that. I think there's a fine line between what you were talking about before, where you're saying that to be good at your job, you need to understand the why, and then understanding that top secret intelligence most likely won't trickle down to infantry diggers. I guess, that exact scenario that you just explained then happened to us. Caught a guy, sent him away, thought he'd be locked up for good. He had explosive residue all over him. 3 days later, we caught him again. And we're like, what the fuck are these idiots doing? Looking back now, I personally would have loved the why, but I do appreciate that you can't get every digger from every coalition country briefed in on.
I knew a lot of the INT guys at the patrol bases, so I'm never, ever going to say anything bad against them, but that's their failing, because you don't need the top secret information to get the why. They can sanitize, because the reason something's top secret, it's not the information, it's how we get it. Do we get it from a HIM source or from a technical source or whatever? But the actual information, you can be told. We can sanitize it down. And so there's 3 of us on this conversation now, right? And if one of us is a source, that, because there's only 3, it might be top secret, because if it gets out, we go, well, fuck, I didn't say it. must be, mech. So, but there's 10 of us. There's a bigger circle of knowledge. So it might only need to be secret because there's more guessing. And then instead of being the information being, we're going to have a video link at this time, it might be in the next 3 days they're going to have they had a video link 3 days ago or whatever. It's not as direct, if that makes sense. So you can, the guys at the patrol base can say, look, the bigger picture is SOTG have been tracking these, the facilitator. So why they may release the dude who built the IED, it's because they want him to catch up with the dude he's getting his components from. But they're actually aware of, or they're tracking him, or, they've got a source in the area. Like, you can get a little bit more information so you're not completely blind. But that's where...
Yeah, I think that's the... I think diggers, and speaking from experience, trusted like special forces shooters, they're like, these guys, well, they're hammers. They will fucking hit nails and they are professionals and blah, blah, blah. But it never trickled down with the intelligence side of it. And I don't know that, I mean, that is a generational, I think, your sergeant shit talked intelligence, and then everyone's like, maybe intelligence is too good at doing what they do and keeping secrets. And then everyone's like, honest, what the fuck are they doing?
A lot of it is because you didn't have TS connectivity at a patrol base. Mm-hmm. And that's literally it. You'd have secret. So, you'd have your secret phones and your secret computers. So, and everything I briefed was at a TS level. So I'd really have to sanitize or build another quad slide to get up to. And the other thing we were aware of was counterintelligence. Like, the Afghans were all over the patrol bases, and I learnt that in Iraq in 2005. When I was working with the Americans, he's one of my best mates now, still to this day. He just speak to the Iraqi cleaners and that. They would know everything that's going on in that base more than anyone else. So there's also a counterintelligence side to it. So there was a number of reasons, but you can still answer the why. The young...
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean,
that would have made a huge difference. But for morale, for everyone's, like, intent going after this dude, if someone had to turn around and said... They let him go for a reason. Nothing else other than it was it was deliberate that we let him go, not he slipped through the cracks. That's all we needed to know, that he didn't get out because of someone's fuck up. And then everyone's happy.
Yeah. And I know from and I did, the 5 rotations. I'd be lucky to sleep 4 hours a day, because we also had to do the debrief. So we pull those blokes, like that old mate Hamdullah out of Baluchi. I'm in the room with him straight away at the ISA. Then I've got to write reports, and I'm looking at other, it's not like you see in the movies. It was me in the battle space. So I might have 30 insurgents in theatre, and I'm looking at them all, and looking at who's presenting, who's pattern of life. Are we in a rotary period? What's the other FE? Because, we had several FEs doing stuff, and so sometimes then you had personality issues. And you've got to remember, in Afghan, the overall commander of Aruzgan was an American. And there were times where he would jump into the Australian OODA loop because, we all knew each other. So we'd go for a coffee, or the biggest thing I'd do is we had the best food at Camp Russell. So I'd invite some of the boys up for a dinner, and, and over that dinner, you'd find more shit out than anything. And, going back to when I was in the Navy, the conventional EOD techs in Baluchi in 2011 were guys that I was in the Navy with. So whenever they were in TK or in Holland, I'd have lunch or dinner with them, and, they were like, oh, if we go to this village, so colour, whoever's making the bombs is left-handed because they're twisted this way. Mm. Whoever's making them in Quali now is the other way because they're twisted another way. The only way you get that is talking to people, but not everyone has those connections or can do it. 100%. Yeah. So, over coffee.
Mex keeps going. All right, we're gonna have to. It'll stop recording. You still got me?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I'll just stop recording. Mex will try and jump back in 2 seconds. I assume. Give me 2 seconds.
What year were you over there?
9-10. One trip, but through Christmas. 2009 and 10.
It was a big snow that year, wasn't it?
Just before we left, yes. We got, what did we get there? I was there for nearly 9 months. So we got there coming into summer, we were there all summer, and then they fucking made us walk out, which was, because I was in Marshall the whole time, Cop Marshall, and
yes. You know Collie now very well.
Who's that?
You know Collie now very well, the village.
Oh, maybe, mate. I've data dumped half the names of the fucking places over there. But no, yeah, they lost too many Bushmasters. So they're like, all right, we're going to pick you up from Truro. You got to walk out. And it was knee deep snow. So we had full summer, full winter in one trip. Anyway, you're back, Max.
Where did I lose
Well, he's been able to have mates that you can sit down and have a coffee and conversation with.
Oh, mate, I think that's one thing we've always done well, hey, is that interpersonal stuff. So,
yeah.
But I can't believe. So going from being an intelligence analyst in that particular theatre, working with those guys, and then we're talking now to the Syrian chemical weapons attack. Was that part of, and we're talking about you briefing in people and military leaders. Can you take us through that, mate, and what it is like briefing people at that level and being involved in something that is that is real. That is not a digger.
Obviously being the unit I was at, that was our bag, chemical, biological, radiological warfare. And every year the CO has a retreat and I would put together a brief of, threats 3, 6, 12 months. And having lived in the Middle East and knowing, it like the back of my hand, I looked at the Arab Rising and everything, and I just knew the way it was going to play out. So that was my big, call for the year. And this was January, February of 13, that, Assad's going to panic and you're going to get chemical weapons attacks in Syria. So I briefed that to the new CO January, February 13 and would update and whatever. So when it happened in August yeah.
So you were confident he was going to gas. And what's his motivations behind gassing?
He's an Alawite Shia and he's gassing disruptive Sunni. Just like Saddam did with the Kurds and that's where I looked at it from. They've done it before. They've got the technology. They don't care about the other side. So I kind of made the bold prediction in January, February. And so when it happened, I already had the briefs done. And everyone was kind of, getting a heads up. And it was funny because the CEO goes, all right, you're going to Canberra to brief at SOHQ. Now, the systems that we used at Holsworthy were different to the systems they used in Canberra, and I didn't know that. So I just thought I could drive down to SO headquarters, log in and brief off, pull my brief up. So I get there and I get into the room and, 7 Ps, preparation, blah, blah, and I get there early and I'm in civvies. Anyway, so I'm looking for the GIS and I'm going, hey, where's the GIS system? Oh, we don't use that here. What do you mean you don't use it here? We use AICnet. Oh, okay. Do they talk? Oh, no. Why? Because my brief's on the other system. So you don't have it with you? Well, no. I thought I could log in and... So I had to brief these commanders off a map. But because I knew the stuff, it actually made me look better. And they've gone, look, come back on Thursday with your effing brief. Yep, no dramas. So then I came back. That was on the Monday or Tuesday. On the Thursday, and it was standing room only. But it was because, I I knew what I was talking about. This is Fookless. This is what they've got here. This is how many sites. This is what they, Sarin, Sum, and this is where they make it. This is the unit, blah, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, I'm with the CO and the OPSO and the doc, and we're at Army headquarters. You've got all the heads of all the agencies, and then I was,
So, okay, so how does he think he's going to get away with gassing and the backlash internationally? Is it arrogance? Was it?
The key element for Syria is Russia. Russia's got a big naval base in Tartus, and they're very well connected. So he kind of hedged his bets that Russia was going to back him. No one had any international respect for Obama anyway. So they kind of wagered that Obama... And remember the big red line? Obama's red line, and if you cross it, they knew he wasn't going to do anything. And when he didn't, they just went nuts. So, yeah. No.
So they didn't give a shit. They're like, oh, fuck. So it was weakness on the US's part.
He only used sarin a couple of times. Anything I'm going to talk about now is open source. He only used sarin a couple of times. He used chlorine a lot. And the ambiguity under the chemical, the OPCW, which is the Chemical Weapons Conventions, is chlorine's deemed as an incapacitating agent and a chemical warfare agent. So whenever you hear about the chlorine bombs and that's a technicality, where when you use sarin like he did in August, and that's a chemical warfare attack. Yeah. So but that was my job.
How do you brief? And then pinging it, mate, that is fucking phenomenal. And then, I mean, these people in these rooms are listening to an intelligent. They know what the fuck they're talking. Like you hear about people running security departments politicians who sit on committees, and are they coming in and listening to these sort of conversations?
This first one at Army headquarters, there was no politicians. It was all the head of agencies, and they're exceptionally smart in what they do and direct. And no one's in the room that isn't there for a purpose. There's no backslappers, and there's no dead weight. And you're also there for a purpose. You don't get out of your lane. Sit down, shut up, talk when you ask questions. And there's no way my boss would have put me in there if he wasn't 1,000,000% confident in my ability, my